Chris Cole is a movie star. His life is eventful and revolves around show business. 24-year-old Zara is Chris's assistant. Her life, by the way, is no less eventful. Naturally, Chris is popular with women, and today he plans to surprise his girlfriend. She was sure it would be a marriage proposal. Zara was supposed to bring a box to the restaurant, but she was horribly late due to traffic. Of course, Chris was angry and stalled for time as much as he could. Zara managed to hand Chris the box discreetly. However, instead of proposing to Ashley, Chris suggested they take a break in their relationship and gave her earrings as a consolation prize. Of course, Ashley was deeply upset but still accepted the gift. Zara was already used to such scenes. Being Chris's assistant, she is forced to carry out all his errands, and this job is far from pleasant, especially since Chris is extremely picky. Brooke Harwood, Zara's mother, was a writer in the past, but ever since her husband Charlie passed away, she hasn't written anything. Lila Ford, Brooke's mother-in-law and former editor, believes that Brooke can return to writing once she works through her struggles. Zara is very close to her mother, but at times the girl worries that at 24, she still isn't living her own life. Brooke reassured her daughter, saying that all her hard work would pay off. Perhaps Chris would make her the director of his company. However, he continues to send her on small errands, at all hours of the day. Despite the late hour, Zara was forced to go to the grocery store. Chris himself hadn't been in a grocery store for 10 years and hadn't eaten regular food in ages. The next morning, Zara went to Chris's ex-girlfriend's house to collect some of his things. Zara hopes that her acquaintance Stella, an aspiring screenwriter, will help her edit the script for the film Chris is currently shooting. Stella promised to think about it. After all, she had plenty of other things to do. Chris continues to torment Zara with his whims. This time the reason for his dissatisfaction was her being late by a few minutes. Chris refused to open the gates for Zara, and she was forced to climb over the fence. Zara can't take it anymore. The housekeeper Mila immediately sensed that the girl was at her breaking point. Full of determination, Zara announced to Chris that she was quitting. He tried to change her mind, reminding her that filming was on Monday and he wouldn't be able to find a new assistant over the weekend. However, Zara feels that she isn't growing at all. Chris promised to introduce her to the production business, but instead, she acts as his personal servant. Zara is truly tired of it. After Zara's emotional monologue, Chris himself wasn't against letting her go. Although of course deep down he was scared, repeating to Zara that there would be no way back. But Zara left without any regrets. For the first time in a long time, she felt relief, but she couldn't find the courage to tell her mother, who had been against this job from the start. Eugenie, Zara's best friend, believes it's better to tell the truth since Brooke will find out sooner or later anyway. Now unemployed and living with her mother, Zara feels like a failure. To cheer up the friend, Eugenie gave her a badge as a gift. Tonight Eugenie is meeting her boyfriend's parents and is very nervous. Zara picked out a beautiful dress from the mother's wardrobe for her. That evening, Zara finally admitted to her mother that she had quit. Right now all the girl wants is to know what to do with her own life. Unfortunately, Brooke has no answer to that question. Chris is suffering too, feeling helpless without his assistant. His only comfort is his pets. Chris has no one else to talk to since he doesn't have any friends. The next day, Chris swallowed his pride and went to Zara, but she wasn't home. This led to his strange encounter with Brooke. Chris was shocked at how good Zara's mother looked. He asked Brooke for permission to wait for Zara here. She was confused but didn't object. Being a celebrity, Chris is used to getting everything he wants and assumes that all women want to date him. Chris declared that he wanted Zara to come back to work. Brooke clearly didn't expect this from someone like Chris. Zara and Stella are working as dog walkers on the side. Stella told Zara that she could no longer help her because she needed a real producer. Otherwise, Stella's career wouldn't move forward. Chris told Brooke that he's starring in a franchise, but the script for the final installment is terrible. Chris couldn't help but be surprised when he learned that Brooke hadn't seen a single one of his films. Time flew by for Chris as he talked with Brooke. It was the first time he felt this way around a woman. Brooke is a writer, so she can keep up with any conversation. Brooke shared that her husband passed away 11 years ago. Chris understood her, as he had also experienced loss. They discussed the poorly written franchise script. Zara called her grandmother to ask for advice. The girl realized that she wouldn't be able to become a writer like her parents because she simply didn't have enough talent. Lila advised the granddaughter to first decide what happiness means to her. Sipping tequila, Brooke and Chris were completely at ease. Chris had never felt so comfortable talking to anyone. Passion sparked between them. Chris realized he had been waiting for Brooke his entire life. Returning home and catching her mother with Chris, Zara was deeply shocked. The girl ran off and hit her head on the doorframe. She simply couldn't process what she saw. Brooke and Chris took Zara to the doctor because she might have had a concussion. Zara couldn't come to terms with the fact that her mother was having an affair with someone like Chris, who was also 16 years younger than her. Brooke calmly tried to explain to her daughter that everyone has a right to their personal life. Wherever Chris goes, he's always surrounded by fans. Even the doctor ignored Zara, his patient, in favor of praising Chris's acting skills. After taking his new beloved and her daughter home, Chris spoke to Zara privately and offered her a job as an assistant producer. The girl agreed on the condition that Chris would stop seeing her mother. Chris promised. At home, Brooke wanted to talk to her daughter, but she didn't have the energy. Zara merely mentioned her new position. The next day was the first day of filming. Chris had conflicts with the director because of his temperamental nature. During a break, Zara told him that she had found a professional screenwriter who could make all the necessary revisions. Overall, Zara was doing an excellent job as an assistant producer. Meanwhile, Brooke was able to return to writing her novel. Suddenly she received a message from Chris inviting her to dinner. At first Brooke declined, but he was very persistent. Brooke spent a long time choosing a dress. She hadn't been on a date in ages. Chris arranged a romantic dinner for her at a restaurant. They were the only guests there. For the first time in his life, Chris was truly in love. At the same time, Zara and Stella were working together on the script. Brooke told Chris about her late husband, who was a very good man and a talented writer. Chris in turn shared that he lost his mother at a young age and later his brother, who had heart problems. He never planned to become an actor, it just happened. Chris had never been nervous talking to a woman before. Brooke said that they shouldn't start a relationship but could remain friends. Chris felt sad that the woman of his dreams was out of reach. He also had never had real friends because until now, no one was interested in the real him. After dinner, they strolled around the city, chatting and laughing. Then they had an honest conversation. Chris clearly wanted more. Brooke was ready to give in but only on the condition that he wouldn't break her heart or lie to her. Returning home, Brooke admitted to her daughter that she had dinner with Chris but nothing more. Zara however didn't believe her mother. Brooke called Lila for advice, while Zara called Eugenie for the same reason. Zara feared that Chris would treat her mother the same way he treated all his previous girlfriends. Meanwhile, Brooke was convinced that what they had was just a fleeting fling, after all he's a superstar. They started spending a lot of time together. Brooke felt like the heroine of a fairy tale. No one had ever courted her so beautifully before. Zara asked the director to be tougher with Chris. Since the director was French and Zara knew some French, she had an advantage. Following Zara's advice, the director began to constantly criticize Chris. He was slightly taken aback but took all the comments into consideration. While preparing for a challenging scene, Chris told Zara that Stella's script wouldn't work because it had too much unnecessary material. However, Chris had already found a suitable screenwriter. Zara couldn't help but notice that her mother had started going out frequently. Usually Brooke would change clothes in her car to avoid suspicion. Zara and Eugenie were drinking wine and talking about their problems. Eugenie was worried that her boyfriend Malcolm hadn't called her back since the dinner with his parents. Zara dismissed it, saying he was probably busy. When Zara went to grab another bottle of wine, she found a draft of a screenplay in the mother's room. That's how Zara realized who Chris's new screenwriter was. The girls tried to get into an exclusive party where Chris was expected to be. Even though they weren't on the guest list, they managed to sneak in by tricking the staff. Zara saw her mother and Chris together. They had no choice but to confess their relationship and the truth about the screenplay. Brooke, who had dedicated her entire life to her daughter, didn't understand why didn't have the right to live for herself now. But Zara was convinced that Chris only used women. Every one of his ex-girlfriends thought they were special. However, Brooke was sure there was something real between them. Moreover, she had fallen in love with Chris, just as she once did with Charlie. Hearing this, Zara gave her mother an ultimatum. If she didn't break up with Chris, Zara would move out. Brooke wasn't ready to make that choice. Taking only the essentials, Zara decided to stay at Eugenie and Malcolm's place for now. That evening, Brooke and Chris spoke on the phone. In tears, Brooke said she didn't want to upset her daughter, so she couldn't see him until Christmas. Chris was sorry to hear that. For the first time, he confessed his love to a woman. And if Chris didn't see Brooke right now, he felt like he would go crazy. Zara asked Eugenie and her boyfriend about their plans for Christmas. Malcolm mentioned that he might visit his parents in Chicago alone. The next day, Brooke went to the mother-in-law's house to help her prepare for Christmas. Lila believed that Brooke deserved to be happy. Brooke had always thought about others first and now had the right to live for herself. To help Brooke, Lila invited her granddaughter for an honest conversation. Zara admitted she didn't mind her mother dating someone, just not Chris. Lila explained to her granddaughter that another person's personal life shouldn't concern anyone else. Zara never expected the grandmother to invite both Brooke and Chris to celebrate Christmas together. Seeing how happy her mother was with Chris, Zara joked and laughed with everyone during dinner. She didn't want to ruin the holiday. Chris raised a toast to Lila, who had brought them all together. If it weren't for her, he would have had no one to spend Christmas with, just like always. Brooke was deeply grateful to her mother-in-law, who despite everything had taken her side. Brooke was euphoric from being in love, but at the same time, she was scared to start over. After so many years, Brooke confessed to Lila that even before Charlie's illness, their marriage had problems. They had even considered divorce. However, when Charlie got sick, Brooke stayed with him until the end and loved him. Lila was very sorry to hear this. For her, Brooke was like a daughter, and she wished her nothing but happiness here and now. They didn't know that Zara was eavesdropping on their conversation. The next morning everyone exchanged gifts, wishing each other a Merry Christmas. Chris gave his beloved a special present, a collection of all her articles and stories. Zara was genuinely happy for her mother. This was the best Christmas of Chris's life. While her mother and Chris were saying goodbye to Layla, Zara spotted a jewelry box with earrings in the trunk of his car. Was Chris really going to leave her mother? Brooke immediately sensed that her daughter was upset, but Zara said nothing. At home, Brooke and Chris were making plans for New Year's. When Zara came in, she asked Chris to leave. She had almost believed in his sincerity, but it seemed it was all just a facade. Zara began listing all of Chris's bad qualities and then revealed the jewelry box with diamond earrings. When breaking up with women, Chris always gave them the same earrings. Chris tried to explain himself by saying he had struggled to pick a gift before deciding on the book. Brooke asked Chris to leave, and he had no choice but to go. She felt humiliated and couldn't hold back her tears. Zara only wanted her mother to see Chris for who he really was. But Brooke was hurt that her daughter had done it this way. Zara went to her best friend and began talking about her problems again. Eugenie told her to stop. Eugenie had broken up with Malcolm, and Zara hadn't even noticed because she never thought about anyone but herself. And so Zara was left completely alone. She decided to spend the night at her second grandmother's house. One way or another, every character in this story felt miserable. This New Year's was utterly joyless. After buying food and beer, Zara went to Eugenie and apologized. They made up and celebrated New Year's together. In a message, Brooke wished her daughter a Happy New Year. Zara replied, telling her how much she loved her. It turned out that Chris had decided to stop playing heroic characters because he felt like a villain in real life. Zara no longer held a grudge against him. Chris honestly admitted that the earrings were just earrings. Zara had no reason to believe him, but she felt ashamed for meddling in someone else's personal life and ruining everything. Chris truly loved Brooke. But how could he prove it to her? Brooke was planning to leave for Princeton for a while to teach. She wanted to take a break because she couldn't write anymore. Only now at 24 years old, Zara realized that her mother deserved to be happy because her happiness didn't take anything away from Zara. That was all Brooke had wanted to hear, but she still wasn't ready to resume her relationship with Chris. To make things right, Zara suggested that Chris visit a deli for the first time in years. Meanwhile, Layla brought Brooke there under a pretext. Grandmother and granddaughter had conspired to make Brooke and Chris cross paths and reconcile. Zara admitted her mistake and promised not to interfere in their relationship again. Chris couldn't miss his chance and proposed that Brooke spend the rest of her life with him. They loved each other, and nothing else mattered. As the saying goes, all's well that ends well. By finding love and harmony, all the characters in this story found harmony in their lives. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel not to miss more exciting new products. Also, the authors will be pleased if you leave your opinion in the comments.